So let's now move on to modifications to a model that's already been manipulated, right? So there have been a number of questions now. You've found yourself in a position. Do you want to jump up with someone and kind of follow? So there have been a number of questions at this point where you found yourself in a pickle because you made a cut, or maybe you made 7 cuts, and then you found out that one of the cuts you made 4 cuts ago was wrong, and you don't want to undo the 4 cuts that were correct, or the 3 cuts that were correct, to get back to the one that you did wrong. So you just want to make a small modification. So I'm just going to quickly start, cutting across the box here. So if I go to the end and I pull it over, I think it was 10 feet. Yeah, we're working this way. So then we're going to go 10 feet in the X direction and 4 feet in the Y direction. Am I moving backwards here? Whatever. I did that wrong. There we go. So I'm going to kind of show you some shortcuts here to that's not correct. Hold on. Do a box. I'm just going to anchor it to the corner here, and it's 10 feet and 4 feet. There we go. That's right. -7 feet. And I'll just move it up 10 feet. So what I just did, because I was getting some graphic issues, I didn't feel like trying to figure out precisely what went wrong with me trying to locate it there. Oh, I do know what went wrong. I didn't type in the @ symbol. But something you might find me do instead of trying to actually place it in the right location before sizing it, I might just anchor to a point and then move it that far. So I know that it needs to go 10 feet in. So rather than trying to move it out there and then build it, I just put it here, and I'm going to do a move command, and I'm going to move it 10 feet. But look at what I did, and look at how the move command works. Huh? Yeah, it's going everywhere. The move command is going to be, it's a 3-dimensional command unless you say otherwise. So if I move my mouse over to this corner, look at what it's doing in the perspective view. It's no longer, not only is it no longer at the corner, but it has translated from its original position exactly as far as the original base point to the new point in 3D, not just 2D, not just in one plane. So if I wanted to go 10 feet in the Y direction, I clicked off of the cube because I don't want to accidentally snap onto any of those object snaps I don't want to, right? We just talked about how that can be kind of nightmarish. So when I do moves, or if I do copies, or any kind of referential but not specifically geometrical point-to-point reference, I'll do it on the side. Again, no risk of accidentally snapping a different object snap than I want. So the way move works is you pick your base point, then you tell it how far, and then you tell it the direction. So it'll say point to move to. I could either just click a point to move it there, but that's not right. What I want it to go is 10 feet in the Y direction. So I type in 10 feet, and now you'll see, rather than going everywhere, it'll only go 10 feet in the direction that my mouse moves from the point. So I hold, if you want it to go directly in either the Y or X direction, I hold Shift. So now, no matter how far, as long as I'm not snapping to something, no matter how far I move my mouse, it stays along that path 10 feet. So you click, and that's that. That was long-winded. Once you do it once or twice, you guys will just move really fast. Don't worry about it. So, what was I going to do here? Yes, yeah, if you make a mistake. So let's say I wanted to have the same thing on the other side. I can do a copy, and I can grab this point and move it over. And it was 10 feet. Our object, our box length is 24 feet. So I have a remainder of 4 feet, so I need to go 14 feet over. So I can type in 14 feet, hold shift, and it'll move over. So these are some of the shortcuts that you, in your experience now trying to create this box, I'm sure a number of you have found shortcuts to try and figure it out. Like, for instance, if you only have 2 copies or 2 instances of the same object, it's easier to copy it than it is to do an array. That kind of stuff. So I've got 2 boxes here, but let's say I accidentally, and I'm just going to move it some odd size like that. So I accidentally put it in the wrong spot. But I go through the process of cutting it like this. So I do my Boolean difference, select the box, and I select the 2 that I cut, and there it is, it's cut. So here's kind of the question of the hour. If I make a small minor mistake and I don't want to undo and fix it because it'll undo too much stuff that I wanted, you have a few options at your disposal. They depend on whether or not you're working in, well, you can do both planar. I'll show you just 2 ways of doing it, essentially. So they're called move face and move edge. So these ones also, write these down because they're incredibly, incredibly important for these little tiny adjustments that you want to make. Move face and move edge. The way move face works, and we're going to now start getting into some more in-depth object snap features, but the way move face works is you grab a face and you tell it how far to move that face in whatever axis. So that looks like this, and it's going to get a little crazy for a second, but see how on that surface, right, type in move face, and then, selected the wrong surface. This part's a little finicky. So you type in move face and, oh darn, gotta zoom in more. And you select the surface that you want to move. Say it's that one. I actually want to select both, but for visible, or for, so that you can kind of visualize what's happening here, I want to just show you on one. So I select that face, I hit enter, and I click, and I start moving somewhere. And let's say I visually see on screen 2'3" is how far I want to move it down. I click, and look at what happened. Right, that is absolutely not what we want, right? So what happened is I was not controlled about where my object snaps were snapping to, or whether or not I was moving in a planar direction. So let's talk real quick about a few of those features. Now we're getting into more of these object snap features, and particularly the one that I warned you about, project. Under the object snap menu down here, there's all the way to the right, the second one to the end on the right-hand side. It's called project. And so the description isn't really descriptive. It says project object snaps. Well, what the heck does that mean? Yeah, click it on. So when you put project on, this is key. And it specifically relates to the top, the front, and the right view in a very special way. When you put project on, anytime you click, it projects that reference down to the work plane. So it looks like this, basically. If I draw, and I'm going to draw it as a curve right now, and I'm going to start here in 3D. Let me turn it off for a second. I'm going to start here in 3D, and you'll see that I've got this kind of wicked curve going on in 3 dimensions. See how that's now a little bit lower? In the right view, now see how it kind of sags a little bit, and it's this warped curve in 3D? When you have project on, if I do the same type of curve, and I click here, and then I click out in space somewhere around here, and then I click out in space back on that corner, and I hit enter, that curve gets projected, right, back down to the work plane. Every single one of those 3 points, even though my cursor was over top of the 2 corners at the top of the box and then somewhere out in space, everything was flattened down to the bottom. So that's how project works in essence. Now, what does it mean for us when we're using referential geometry? So if we have referential geometry, that means even if my mouse accidentally slides off of the object snap I want, it's going to stay in plane. And that looks like this. Move face. Select the object, or the face of the object I want to move. I can go into the top view. I can move it down this way, and I click. And it's still a little bit off because I didn't make sure that it moved straight. But even though my mouse was off of that, you see it's still, at least in this elevation, in plane. You understanding that so far? So now, how do you do it correctly, right? When I do a move face, I'm going to select the inside face here. I'm also going to rotate around, select the opposite face, because I know it's the right size, I just need to move it down. I hit enter. Because project is on, doesn't really matter where I select. I could actually select on the object itself and move it down. And remember, you have to, well, you could either do what I just did accidentally and snap to something and then follow a snap path, or hold shift and move it down, and that'll begin to align it. However, again, that's not fully correct either because it's not aligned. Okay, I sort of just moved it by eye. So here's the real kicker. Project, its power really lies in the smart track, because with project on, I can move my object referential to the smart track off of another geometry. So I know this is incredibly long-winded, but here's what it looks like. Move face. I'm going to select all of these faces. Notice how this time I just did it in the top view. Doesn't really matter. I can go and individually select them if I want. But I hit enter. I grab this bottom corner. I'm going to hover over the corner that I want it to be aligned with. This is very, very powerful. Hover over that corner. What's that?
If you don't want that line going kind of like...
Well, you'll see. You'll see. So, guys, so you hover, this is very important, guys. You hover over the point that you want it to be aligned to, and then you pull it back, and you're using not your smart track from your origin point, but you're using a referential smart track off of another geometry. So I hovered over, I pull it down, I hold shift, and then it's showing you this, INT. I haven't introduced that to you yet, but that's another object snap. And even though I don't have INT turned on, it knows that that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to move it to the intersection of the smart track and your projection line. So you click it, and now they're perfectly aligned. See here? Okay, so I know with this particular example, it doesn't seem all that powerful, but I guarantee you it's incredibly powerful for making an accurate model. That's very, very important. So if you're looking for intersect as one of your object snaps, it's kind of in the middle-ish. It says INT, and you can turn that one on now too. It's very, very important to turn that on now that we know what it does. Are there any questions on that so far? None? All right, cool. I'm going to stop this one, and we'll move on to something else in a few.